Hello again, everybody. My name's Kurt Conrad, and you're listening to West 4th and Goal, a podcast for high school football fans here in North Central Ohio. We're broadcasting from the IdeaWorks podcast studio on West 4th Street in downtown Mansfield. IdeaWorks is a co-workspace for mobile professionals and entrepreneurs. So if you're a small business owner looking for a workspace and a place to hatch your next great idea, go to ideaworksohio.com to schedule a tour. With me, as always, is co-host Noah Jones. And Noah, the playoffs got underway last weekend, and it was a great weekend for the area of the 6 area teams to qualify for the postseason. 5 of them won their regional quarterfinal games. That's a pretty good percentage.
Yeah, it's been a great season, and the playoffs are looking to be the same way.
Yeah, before we get into the playoff scene here, let's take a minute one more time to thank Two Cousins Pizza, the official pizza of West 4th and Goal. Andy McIntyre and his team at Two Cousins have really stepped up for us this year. If you're listening to us, do us and yourself a favor and head over to Two Cousins Pizza at 103 North Main Street for lunch or dinner. Two Cousins has a full menu, and I assure you won't be disappointed. You can call in your order at 419-522-2211. Once again, that's Andy McIntyre and Two Cousins Pizza, the official pizza of West 4th and Goal.
We need a really cool sound effect next year.
Yeah.
I think like a crash of thunder or maybe like an oven timer.
Right on.
Yeah, that's something that we should definitely invest in.
It's all about production value, I guess.
Right.
While we're thanking people, Noah, we probably ought to thank our listeners one more time. This is our 12th episode this season, and through the first 11 weeks, we've had a great amount of success, a whole bunch of downloads. None of that would be possible without the listeners out there, so we certainly appreciate everything you guys do for us.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I think the amount of support that we get for the sort of stupid stuff that we try that ends up panning out. So
Yeah,
definitely, you have all of our appreciation.
Yeah, I don't think any of us when we started knew how we'd be received, but it's gone very well, and we certainly appreciate everyone.
Specifically to the ones who are in Russia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got downloads in several different countries, and I think every state in the union except 2. So it's been a pretty good run for us. Like we were talking about earlier, we had 6 teams in the playoffs, and 5 of them are going to be playing again this week. It's the most successful opening weekend in at least the past decade. I went back and looked, and I can't find any time where it was 5 out of 6 or anything even remotely close. And in 2011, there were 4 area teams that made the playoffs, and they were 3-1 that opening weekend. 2 of those teams, Winford in Division 5 and Buckeye Central in Division 6, reached the state semifinals that year, and Buckeye Central actually played for a state championship that year. They lost to Marion Local, a team who is steeped in high school football. If you're a high school football fan, you know who Marion Local is. And Buckeye Central played to them and lost to them that year in 2011. That's the last time we had a local team reach a state championship game. Shelby was a state semifinalist last year. Of course, the only time anyone from the area has ever won a state championship was in 1985. Lee Owens was the coach of the Galleon Tigers. That's the same Lee Owens who's coaching over at Ashland University right now. So
yeah,
it's been a very long time. They beat Youngstown Cardinal Mooney 6-0 in the Division II title game. And what strikes me about that is that there was a time, I think Galleon's a Division 5 school or a Division 4 school now, and at the time they were D2. So there was a considerably bigger population base I think they were drawn from out there. Last Friday I was in Tiffin. I watched 7th seed Lexington knock off number 2 Tiffin Columbian. That was in Division 3, Region 10. Also on Friday in Division 6, Region 22, 3rd-seeded Hillsdale had its way with number 6 Northwood, 36-6. In that same region, the only team that lost in the area was number 8 seed Loudonville. They fell to top-seeded Seneca East at Willard High School. Game was moved to Willard because Seneca East Field was unplayable. The Redbirds fell 33-9 in that game. It was a lot closer than the final score indicated. Loudonville trailed 13-9, I think, going into the fourth quarter. They gave up 20 in the fourth, so it was a very good season for them. That takes us to Saturday, and all three area teams won. Division 4, Region 14, top-seeded Clear Fork had its hands full with number 8 Bryan. They eventually won 20-6. I think the Colts were winning that game 7-6 in the fourth quarter before scoring a couple times in the final 8.5 minutes.
Right.
And then in Division 7, Region 25, the Mapleton Mounties, who don't get a lot of press over this way, they beat Youngstown Valley Christian. They put up a bunch of points, 47-28, and that was a 3 versus 6 matchup. Mapleton hosted that game.
I definitely read that story on Richland Source, and I think we had Zach Massa go out and take photos, correct?
Right,
yeah.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, in Region 27 of Division 7, the top-seeded Lucas Cubs hosted number 8 Hannibal River. The Cubs cruised to a 42-0 win over the Pilots in a game that was played at Madison because of unplayable field conditions at Bob Wine Field. We are joined this week by a member of those Cubs. He's a senior. He's a center. It's Robert Williams. And Robert, thanks for coming down and taking some time to join us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And I would imagine you guys have been in the playoffs 5 years in a row here. There are some kids in the area who will never get to experience that. Is it something that you take for granted, or is it something that you actually stop and think and appreciate what's going on while it's happening?
No, we always try to appreciate everything we get. We always try to earn everything we get. Never try to take anything for granted.
Right. And before we get into more football stuff here, you were telling us right before we came on the air here, you're gonna have an associate's degree by the time you graduate from high school. Just tell us a little bit about that.
It's a great program. It's a College Now program. There's 2 options. You can either get an engineering degree or a business degree with your last 2 years of high school.
And you are an engineering degree, right?
Yes, I am an engineering.
Tell us a little bit about you were telling us a little earlier, and I didn't understand a word you were saying. Tell us a little bit about that.
Calculus. It's a lot of calculus, a lot of math, science.
And that's why the journalists don't understand any of that.
No.
No, but it's the plan down the road is to be well, you go ahead. It kind of blew us away.
Yeah, the plan is to be a rocket engineer, get my master's and my bachelor's after high school.
We've had a lot of interesting kids on, but I think this is our first rocket scientist.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Just talk to us a little bit about what interests you in building rockets or rocket science.
It's the aerodynamics of it, the fact that we can take something from the ground and put it in the sky and keep it in the sky.
That's cool. I feel like that takes a lot of imagination to go along with it. I too wanted to be an astronaut when I was younger,
right?
But obviously I'm here in the podcast booth.
Things didn't quite work out.
They did not.
It fascinates me every time I get on an airplane, and I try not to think about it too much. But it's I remember a few years ago when an airliner, I think, was lost, and it went down in the sea, and they're still looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, I think sometimes, how does that happen in this day and age? And then I think, how does it not happen every day when you're putting those giant things in the air?
Right.
How does that? We do an awful lot of traveling, my wife and son and I try desperately not to think too hard about it when I get on the airplane. Well, let's shift gears here and get back to some football. You guys, Lucas had its most successful playoff run when you were a freshman. That was the fall of 2015. You guys won a really exciting regional semifinal game against, I think, Tiffin Calvert. I can't even remember where it was played. It was pretty cold that night.
Yeah, it was freezing.
Just tell us you lost to Macomb, a really good Macomb team in the regional championship game that year. What do you remember about that run? We were talking a little bit. You were you lettered as a freshman on special teams, but that's got to be pretty fresh on your mind still, I would think, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. A run like that, you never forget it. I'll remember that for the rest of my life.
Right. Now, coming right out of junior high school, and the year before, Lucas won a playoff game. So you guys kind of knew what was going to happen. But you're coming right from 8th grade football. You're jumping, and all of a sudden you're playing. Even if it's only on special teams, you're playing on Friday nights under the lights with guys who are a lot bigger and faster. What's that transition like for you? Is your head spinning a little bit when you get out there for the first time?
Absolutely. We go to football camp in the summer, and you're swimming and everything that you're trying to learn, but it's a big jump, but you got to learn fast if you want to play, and that's what I had to do.
Right.
What's the motivational level between Fridays? Is it that I need to lift heavier so that I can be in as good a shape to go up against these seniors and juniors, or is it I need to study my playbook? Is it a little bit of everything?
It's about assuming your role, no matter where you get placed, whether it be Friday night, Saturday morning, you always got to try to make yourself better to make your team better.
Okay.
So you as a freshman, you might not have played a lot on offense, but you certainly had a front row seat for one of the best running backs in school history in Mason Galco.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, for the last 3 years, you've been blocking for one of the best running backs in school history, and Jeb Grover, a guy we had on earlier this year. Are there any similarities between those guys? I mean, are the running styles similar? Are they different? Or?
Yeah, they're similar. Mason, he didn't have blazing speed,
right.
And Jeb's he's fast, but they both know how to put a shoulder down. They both know how to run somebody over. Jeb's very elusive, and he can cut, but when he needs to put his shoulder down, he absolutely will.
Right. Now 2 years ago, you guys qualified. I was the year after that great playoff run, and you lost a pretty talented senior class, including Mason Galco. So you're a sophomore. You're all of a sudden you're starting. You guys are qualify for the playoffs again. You're on the road. You're at Arlington. You lose that game by 2 points. It's 21-19. And then last year, you guys host a playoff game. You lose that game 20-19. So and I think, Noah, you might have covered both those games.
Yeah, it's funny. The one time that I don't cover the game, you guys win. So maybe I just will ask to not cover anymore.
Noah may not cover the Cubs during the rest of the postseason. Anyhow, that's 2 playoff games, combined score of 3 points that you lose by. I mean, are there lessons to be learned from that? I mean, how when you look back, is it disappointing? Is it frustrating? I mean, how do you look at those games?
Absolutely, it's frustrating. The lesson I took out of it was preparation. Preparation's everything. A good week of practice means a good game on Friday or Saturday.
Right. And so that brings us to this year. You start the season with a win over Danville. That's a team that you guys haven't beaten since 1991. I think that doesn't mean a lot to you because you weren't allowed. I mean, but I mean, I think you guys played them a couple of times
before you were born.
Right.
That's a way to put it.
Absolutely. I mean, what did that do for you guys mentally? I guess to finally be able to knock those guys off.
I mean, coming into the season, the whole off season, that's our Super Bowl. That's our Super Bowl that we need to win week 1, obviously, to get to week 2. But they were our opponent for the entire off season.
Right. And that's that guys say that I talk to. I'm always covering the Madison and Shelby have traditionally opened the season on a Thursday here, and both coaches say that's a game we prepare for 3 months. It's like no other game of the year. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I would imagine to have a rival like that and have 3 months to prepare for them. That's you certainly know what to expect, I guess, when you take that much time. Now you guys you lost twice in 3 weeks in kind of the middle of the season. You lost to a very good Northmore team. They're still playing, and then a couple weeks later you lost to a Columbus Centennial team that's probably twice as big as you guys are, and maybe bigger than that. So you're 3-2 at the midway point of the season. Was there ever a sense of panic? I mean, you guys were you're a veteran bunch, but you know how hard your schedule is. If you let a couple of those get away, and then there's maybe not a week 11. I mean, is there some panic in when you're 3-2?
No, you can't.
Yeah.
You have no time to panic. If you panic, then you don't win the next week. You can't let a team beat you twice.
Right.
How talk to us a little bit. We talked with Jeb about this, so let me just
preface myself.
Yep, thank you. Let me preface that by saying that Jeb and I have talked about this as well. But it's interesting to me how you guys sort of are at the mercy of other teams in terms of being able to play who you play.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just really interesting to me. Talk to me a little bit about that if you can, just sort of about playing essentially whoever is willing at this point to play you guys.
Well, we obviously as players have no say in that postseason,
right.
We never try to look at our opponent. I mean, of course, we're going to watch film and stuff, but it's always a faceless opponent. We're always just going out during the week and trying to make ourselves better.
Yeah, and it's so tough for you guys because I mean you're not in a conference, so you got to play wherever you can find games because
which can be hours away.
Traditionally, if you're in a conference with 8 or 7 other teams, you play 7 conference games for the final 7 weeks of the season. You guys don't have that luxury. You're just going out and trying to find whatever you can find. And when I talked to Scott Spittler earlier in the year, he said, that's only part of the problem. The other problem is that no schools your size want to play you right now because they know what's going to happen. So you got to go out and schedule Division 4s and Division 3s and Division 5s, and that takes its toll on a Division 7 school. I would think it's got to be tough.
Oh no, we love it. I mean, it's a lot of computer points.
Right.
So we love the challenge. We love seeing what we can do. We love being battle tested going into the postseason.
Right. And you beat a couple of those teams in week 7 and 8 this year. You played Harrison Central. They're a D4. You played Cincinnati Aiken. They're a D4. And really, you beat the brakes off of both those teams. I mean, what's that do for you, I guess, mentally? I mean, especially with the postseason approaching, that I think one of those games might have sealed a playoff berth for you guys. I mean, does that kind of build the confidence and get the ball rolling a little bit there?
I mean, of course it builds the confidence, but, we try to take our wins with a grain of salt and always move on to the next week, because without the next week, you don't get to the week after that.
Right. And then in week 9, you guys played Hannibal River, a team that had beaten you last year in the regular season. I would imagine that served as some motivation for you guys this year?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, what do you remember about last year's game, and then what was said this week, leading up to that game this year?
I remember being on the 2-yard line on 4th down and not getting the touchdown to win the game. That's a vivid memory I will never forget.
I would imagine that's all the motivation you need right there.
That's it.
So that brings us to week 10, and you guys traveled to Lima on a Saturday. I mean, everyone had finished their regular seasons on Friday, and you were basically the only game in town that night. Played at Lima Central Catholic. That's an undefeated team, a division bigger than you, and a lot of high expectations. You guys go there and you beat them 21-14 at their place. What's that bus ride home like? I would imagine that's got to be exhilarating.
Yeah, it was a party on the ride home. A lot of loud music.
Just playing. I mean, and I guess it goes for your whole schedule. But just playing in LCC, a team like that with that much tradition and that much talent. I mean, I would imagine you're not going to see anything in the Division 7 postseason that you didn't see on week 10 against an LCC team like that.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, our division we have a strong division all the way around. I mean, you never underestimate a team, no matter who you beat.
Right. Now, last week you guys opened the playoffs at home, kind of. We'll get to that in a minute. But you guys played Hannibal River again. You'd beaten them pretty handily a couple weeks earlier. I talked to Coach Spittler again, and there's some reservations, I would imagine, playing the same team twice in 3 weeks. I mean, there's probably not a whole lot of secrets between the two of you. I mean, were you guys concerned about that, or did you kind of just approach it like anything else?
I mean, we approached it like we'd approach any other game. I mean, we're going out there to play a football game and play better than we did the week before. Doesn't matter who we're playing.
And that game was played over at Madison at StarTech Stadium. Was it kind of unusual hosting a game at a venue that wasn't yours?
Of course it was unusual, but we can't look at that. We can't let anything distract us. I mean, there was a great home vibe there. A lot of fans came out. We had our flags there. We had our announcer. It was a good atmosphere.
And Noah, you wouldn't believe how many. I didn't know there were that many Lucas flags in all of Lucas. There must have been 30 or 40 of them flying around at StarTech Stadium last week.
Do we need to address why they played in Madison?
Oh, absolutely. It was simply a field condition thing, right? Yeah. I mean, your guys' field was not in great shape after. I mean, you guys had 7 home games this year. That was the one good thing about playing the schedule you did. But
right.
I mean, I think the last 3 or 4 weeks it rained. So I mean, that was torn up, and I was over there earlier in the season. Went to one of your practices, and I mean, your practice field's a little roughed up out back there too. So I mean, it's just a drainage issue, I think. But I tell you what, and Madison's. I don't know what the seating capacity is there, but you guys pretty well filled up the home side of those stands. I would imagine, and it's certainly not the first time. I mean, Lucas, the community has always been very supportive of the football team. But what's that mean to you guys? The players. That when you look up there and see not too many empty seats in a stadium that big.
It means everything to us. Seeing our entire town out there supporting us for those football games, it just means the world. And
it's always been. The last one out of Lucas on a Friday night, turn off the lights. It's always been like that, and that's so that's so exciting. I would imagine. It was 42-0 last week. It was one-sided from the jump. Jeb Grover, who set the school record for career rushing and I think single season rushing too. He had 5 carries all in the first half. 4 of them went for touchdowns. 209 yards. Have you ever seen him look any better than what he looked last week?
Jeb looks good every week. But no, he took that game to himself, and of course we were there, but Jeb Grover had a great game. Yeah,
and we were talking off air, and he had 5 carries, 4 touchdowns, and the first thing I asked him afterward, I said, Jeb, what happened on the one carry? And with a straight face, he didn't miss a beat. He looked at me and said, I was my first carry. I just wasn't warmed up yet, which I thought was a great answer.
Yeah.
Now afterwards, you guys went back back to your home field to take photos, which is, I understand, is a traditional, the last game at your home field. I mean, was that vibe a little different? I mean, was it exciting? Was it kind of sad? I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, there was mixed emotions. I mean, there was a lot of people there. We took pictures. We slid in the mud. It was all fun.
I would imagine there was plenty of mud to slide in.
Absolutely.
I was looking back of the 12 seniors on this year's roster. 11 of those guys were on the roster in 2015 as freshmen. You guys have played together for a long time. What's that chemistry like, I guess? I mean, I would imagine you guys can kind of anticipate what each other's going to do before you do it.
Yeah, the chemistry means a lot. I mean, of course we have talent, but that team chemistry, it means so much.
Like we talked about, you were on a regional final team as a freshman. Back then, it probably seemed like you were going to play high school football forever, Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, you're to a point in your career where every game could be your last game. I mean, is there a greater sense of urgency now? I mean, how have you changed, I guess, mentally since back then? Has it flown by?
Yeah, of course it's flown by. I mean, I remember I was told every week, oh, it's going to fly by, but you never believe it until you get there.
Right. That year, in 2015, I remember that class pretty well because I covered that whole tournament run. And that was a really good senior class. I think there was 10 of them. But those guys were really, a good bunch of guys. And it seemed like they were very supportive of the younger guys. I mean, it seemed like they kind of took you guys under your wing. I mean, now that you're the senior, I mean, are you guys doing the same thing? I mean, you guys have a big freshman class this year. Do you kind of feel it's your obligation to do the same thing for those guys?
Absolutely. You want to leave a legacy. I mean, yeah, we get to play, but, it's our last year. There's guys coming up that need to step up.
Right. You guys play number 4 seed this week. It's Waterford. It's on Saturday night. It's at Chillicothe. Waterford beat number 5 Burn Union last week. I don't know how closely you guys follow this stuff, but Drew Pastor in Worcester has a site called Drew Pastor's Ohio Fantastic 50. He has you guys as a 10-point favorite is what I'm getting at. I mean, is that stuff that you guys – do you know about that? Do you try not to pay any attention to that?
I mean, of course we know about that, but that's all simulations. That really doesn't mean much to us. We just got to go out there and play the best game we can.
And along those lines, is it hard? Are there a lot more distractions in week 12 than there are, say, in week 2 of the regular season? I mean, do you have to, I don't know, go on social media blackout and not paying any attention to what's going on?
Yeah, you kind of got to tune out the noise. I mean, we tried. That's the hardest part of the postseason is all the extra stuff that gets brought in is tuning that out and just going and acting like it's a regular season game, just playing football.
Right.
Is that hard?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you talk to us a little bit about it? For those of us who have never played playoff football?
Well, tonight, there's a community bonfire you go to after practice, and tomorrow there's a team bonding, and, there's extra, you get snacks after practice. It's just little stuff like that just makes it the postseason. It's no longer the regular season.
So, there's added pressure might be too negative of a word, but, there's maybe a game is made up to be more each game?
Absolutely, because, especially for the seniors, I mean, this could be your last game. You never know going into it.
Okay, I get it.
What's your social media presence like? I mean, do you pay attention to that? Are you a guy who's on social media a lot? Or
I'm on social media, but I try to keep my phone off during the postseason.
Do you follow Kurt on Twitter?
Everybody should follow Kurt on Twitter.
Kurt J. Conrad should. Yeah.
Now, if you guys win on Saturday, and of course you don't want to look down the road, that's stuff for guys like me to do. But if you guys were to win, and if Trimble upsets, who is it, Harvest Prep, that's a 3-2 on the other side of the bracket. That would set up a rematch of last year's first round game. I mean, does that even cross your mind? I mean, do you try not to think about how excited you would be to get a chance at those guys again?
I mean, you can't think about it. No matter how much you want to, you can't.
Right on. Now I was going back and looking through our archives to see if there were any instances of Robert Williams popping up in our archives. And you were a wrestler as a freshman. Not on the wrestling team anymore?
No. I used it to get me a starting spot on varsity, and I was done with it.
Right on. At smaller school, do you do anything in the spring?
I lift.
Okay. Well, I think you're probably the exception to the rule at smaller schools then, right? I mean, it seems like for Lucas to field a team in every sport, it's all hands on deck, I would imagine. I mean, is that kind of how it is? I mean, is it the little kids got to do a lot of things down there?
Yeah, everybody plays a lot of sports. I came from Medina, which is a bigger school, which is you play one sport and you work for that sport all year round.
When'd you get here?
My freshman year.
Oh, okay. How'd you guys end up in Richland County?
Oh, I moved down with my dad.
Okay.
But
Well, let's take a quick break here. We'll come back and we'll take a look at last week's playoff games and from around the area, and then we'll look ahead to see what's coming up this weekend. You can stick around for a little longer.
absolutely.
All right, we'll be right back with Robert Williams. This is West 4th and Goal. Welcome back to West 4th and Goal, a podcast for high school football fans in North Central Ohio. We're here with Lucas Senior Robert Williams. And Robert, we touched on it a little early in the show. You guys played River for the second time in 3 weeks, and for the second time in 3 weeks, you came away with a pretty convincing win. I didn't know much about them when I got there. I got a copy of the roster, and they had 22 guys on the roster, and I counted them, and there was 19 guys dressed. Having done what you did to them a couple weeks earlier, I mean, is it hard not to overlook a team like that? I mean, granted it's the playoffs, so your focus is there, but I mean, I would imagine you kind of knew how things were gonna play out.
Well, I have a lot of respect for River. I have a lot of respect for their coach. They're a good football team, and you play a team a second time in 3 weeks. They know all your tricks.
Right.
They know what you're gonna do.
Yeah, and again, last Friday I was at Tiffin to cover number 7 Lex at number 2 Columbian. Minutemen came away with a 31-21. I guess you can call it an upset, but Lexington is playing as well as anyone in the area right now, and
It helps when you have the best team or the best player in the.
yeah, absolutely. Ohio State recruit Cade Stover had get this, and this is pretty much par for the course for Cade. He had 23 tackles, 2 interceptions, rushed for 170 yards, and scored 2 touchdowns.
OH, Kurt.
That's a day.
OH.
That is a day, and I mean, it's that, and that's certainly not like a out of the ordinary thing for him. It's I hate to come on here and always be blowing the trumpet for the guy, but I mean he's a heck of a player. I mean it doesn't happen very often that you get to watch a guy who's going to play at Ohio State. And it's pretty cool to see what he's been able to do here the last 4
Well,
years.
what I enjoy most about Cade's stories is not necessarily what he's doing on the field, but whenever we talk about him with a lot of the athletes that we have in here. We talked about him while we were having our 2 cousins earlier, and not a single athlete has said anything like, "Oh, I hate him. He's such a horrible guy," or
Right.
like garbage talker, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just really cool because he's a really good guy,
Yeah.
and that makes it so much easier to root for him. And you're nodding your head. So
Absolutely.
I know that's not fake news.
And we talked earlier. You said you would have liked to play Lexington if for no other reason than to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Also last week, Hillsdale hosted the first playoff game in program history, which a lot of people, myself included, kind of find surprising. I'm a Hillsdale graduate. When I was in high school, I never played football, but the football program was not in a great spot back then. But they've been very good for the last 10 years or so. It surprises me that they hadn't hosted a playoff game before last week. They welcomed Northwood, a team right outside of Toledo, who probably had a 3.5-hour bus ride to get there. Hillsdale won 36-6. In that game, Hillsdale rushed for 312 yards. Northwood was limited to 121 yards. Garrett Smith led the Falcons with 150 yards on the ground. Briar Funk, who's a big fullback, rushed for 2 touchdowns and 85 yards. So that's a real exciting thing. I mean, you guys know. I mean, it's exciting stuff to host a playoff game. It's one thing to go on the road, but there's some prestige that comes with hosting a game like that.
Absolutely.
You have any idea what that does for like the school?
I'm not exactly sure. I mean,
Do they get money from it or
Well,
anything like that?
they get to keep concessions.
Okay.
The OHSA gets the ticket money, I believe,
course
is how
they
it
do.
works. And then some places charge for parking, and I think the schools get to hold on to that money.
Gotcha.
And then whatever concessions are sold, they get to hold on to that money. And a lot of fields probably were not in great shape. I mean, the field was probably pretty torn up last week.
Right.
But there's some prestige that comes with hosting that game, and then there's the revenue portion that you got to take that into account too. So
Right.
I'm sure that having an extra home game and all the additional excitement, there's some money to be made there. Also, last Friday, Loudonville saw its season come to an end. It was 33-9 at Seneca East. Loudonville trailed 13-9 going into the fourth quarter, but gave up 20 straight points in the fourth. you guys played Loudonville a couple times when you were earlier in your career. What do you remember about those teams? I mean, you guys, I think you beat them both times, but they finally got things turned around a little bit down there.
Tough and physical. That's what I remember from Loudonville.
Yeah, absolutely. And I covered a game between Loudonville and Hillsdale earlier in the year, and Hillsdale was clearly favored because Loudonville hadn't won a regular season game. They were 0-10 last year. They made a coaching change. They were 0-2 to start this year. Then they upset Hillsdale in week 3. And I remember thinking, man, they were just a lot more physical than Hillsdale was that night. They went out and hit them. They went out and punched them in the mouth a little bit. And I think it did Hillsdale a world of good, actually. I mean, they realized, hey, we can't just coast and read about how good we are in the newspaper. We got to go out there and play the game a little bit.
Right.
And then Saturday games, top-seeded Clear Fork needed a couple of late scores to knock off Bryan 20-6. Sophomore defensive back Ashton Lyon had a pair of interceptions. He returned one of them for a touchdown. That was when Clear Fork was clinging to a 7-6 lead early in the fourth quarter. Then they scored another touchdown to kind of seal it. Less than 2 minutes to go. I think that came as a surprise to a lot of people. A lot of people thought, oh, that's an 8-versus-1. Clear Fork hadn't lost a regular season game in 2 years. This is going to be another blowout. And Bryan came down and gave them all they wanted, which was maybe that's going to do Clear Fork some good here down the road. Also on Saturday, Mapleton scored 47 points. I saw them earlier in the year. It was against Youngstown Valley Christians, the team they beat. Mapleton started the game with an onside kick. They recovered it. The quarterback, I think, what's his name, Logan Farmar, I believe, threw 3 touchdown passes. They were ahead 21-0 after the first quarter. Farmar threw for 270 yards and 5 touchdowns. They might be the best kept secret. I mean, that's a pretty solid team over there. I mean, they give up some points, which could potentially cause problems down the road a little bit. But I mean, if you're scoring 50 in a playoff game, you're doing something right. And you guys know a little bit about that. That brings us to this week. We'll run through the matchups here. We'll go on Friday. Lex is they're playing at Willard. They're playing Sandusky. And again, if you got one of the best players in the states and it's a one game situation, you'll take your chances with Kate Stover and see what happens there. Also on Friday, Hillsdale is they are at Findlay. They're playing a team called Sherwood Fairview. It's a team up near Bryan. It's a pretty long drive, but the Falcons, I think, are favored in that game. I don't know if that stuff really matters that much, but I mean, Hillsdale's a pretty solid team. They play in a pretty tough league. That certainly benefits them. My nephew's the quarterback over there, and he and I were talking after the game last week, and he said, I can't believe that team, the team that they beat, Northwood. He said, they were 9-1. I said, well, there's some differences in the level of competition. I mean, that's not to take anything away from the league that Northwood played in. It's the Toledo Area Athletic Conference. I said, but you're playing basically playoff caliber physicality every week in the Wayne County Athletic League, and that's certainly that gets you ready for anything you encounter in the postseason.
Well, it's physicality, but it's also mental too. I mean, those are all so competitive that you sort of have to keep a playoff-esque mindset.
Right, absolutely. And Saturday night games, Clear Fork is at where are they playing? They're playing at Worcester, and they're playing a team they beat in the first round last year, Lorraine Clearview. It seems to me that maybe last week was a wake-up call for the Colts, playing in a close game. They haven't played in many this year. Now, last year it was different because they played in several close games. I think they won 2 games in overtime last year. They kicked a walk-off field goal in another one.
Yeah.
This year, not too many teams have stayed within 2 or 3 scores of them. So, it's Clearview this coming week, and Clearview beat Highland, a team not too far away from here, 30-16. So, I look for the Colts, and maybe who knows what's going to happen there. I mean, it's week 12, so you can't really I don't know if there's anyone favored. Everyone's good at this point.
It's all playoff football from here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also on Saturday, the Cubs they're gonna take on Waterford. The Wildcats. Waterford knocked off Bern Union last week, and without giving away too many secrets, what do they do well? What's Waterford do well? What concerns you? And what are you guys going to have to do?
They have a star running back. I mean, they have a good quarterback as well, and it's just about playing defense and keeping those guys under control. What's this week? I mean, in all playoff weeks, I guess. I would imagine you guys aren't doing a whole lot of
hitting right now? I mean, I would imagine it's mostly just film study. I mean, you guys aren't going to reinvent the wheel and put in a new offense in the 5 days between playoff games. So what goes on in practice?
No, we just try to treat it like any other week. Practice is the same. It's on the field instead of on the practice field due to the fact that it gets dark early. But we try to keep practices normal as usual.
Are you guys worried about injuries at all?
You can't be worried about injuries. They happen. We want to keep our guys healthy, of course, but if you don't practice like you play, you're not going to play very well.
Right. Do they turn on the lights at Bob Line for you guys?
Absolutely.
That's cool. So you get to practice underneath the lights. And then also in Division 7, Region 25, Mapleton takes on Warren JFK. JFK, I think, beat Wyndham last week in a game that got pretty testy. I think Wyndham had a few guys that got tossed out of that game. And I think one of the JFK running backs actually got hurt in that game. So I don't know if he'll be back. This is all, speculation. I haven't verified anything. But, if Mapleton's scoring all those points against a playoff team last week, I mean, who knows how far the Mounties will take it here. Their coach is actually Lee Owens' son-in-law, I believe, at Mapleton. So, I mean, he certainly just pick his father-in-law's brain, and that would certainly wouldn't hurt, I wouldn't imagine. So I think that's going to do it. We've hit on all the games. We certainly appreciate you stopping down, and good luck to you guys. Good luck to the Cubs this week, and we'll talk to you next week. This has been West Fourth and Goal.